a quote from Mark Passio. If any of you guys are not familiar with Mark Passio's work, I think this one is quite powerful. It says, freedom comes before everything, including life. It isn't life, freedom, property. It's freedom, life, property. That's the correct order. Life without freedom isn't worth living because life without freedom is slavery. Most people are so fearful and attached to life that they would give up freedom to have safety. No amount of safety is worth the loss of freedom. No amount of even health is worth the loss of freedom. Dangerous, unhealthy freedom is still more important than a life where you are perfectly safe and perfectly healthy and enslaved. As soon as some crisis comes down that threatens their safety or health, they're immediately willing to sacrifice their freedom in the name of safety or health. You have to be willing to die. Liberty or death means liberty or death. So figured I would start off with that quote. I have many more I wrote for the show to share with you guys, because frankly, there's certain perspectives that I see are not being shared, and that tends to be the bulk of my work, right? Unintentionally. I mean, it's just I simply ran into information that has blown me away. And some of you guys may have come from, maybe it's an American state national background, maybe a Republican background, maybe you started as a Democrat or even a Libertarian, right? I don't identify with any of these things, but it is important that wherever you are from, I ask you, are you a truth seeker? Are you trying to attain freedom? And do you really care about freedom? And are you consistent with your principles? And what does it really mean to do so? Well, through my study, the deeper I've gone with it, started out very deeply Republican, knew everything about Trump, followed every single, rally and speech he made, knew people close to him, held open the door at the polls, had the water bottle, had the flags. I have all the pictures to show it. I never showed it on my channel. I could. And people were always like, you should run for president one day, because I sounded so great, and I was not online at the time, but I had all the arguments that you see now from Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro and all these right-wing nut jobs, or whatever you want to call them, if you want me to be blunt. There's a bunch of them online. A lot of them make their living off of an ideology, a collectivized ideology that they're selling to their audience, and often even teaching the younger generation, going to college campuses, oh, Ben Shapiro destroys this person, they own them, with this argument, as if it's some sort of competition. And we're not really truly in it for truth and freedom and philosophy, which is often uncomfortable, but rather it's very comfortable to watch the new theater game, the new sports game that is called politics. It's rather engaging, isn't it? This is something that I quarrel with quite a bit on my channel, is the games that people play with within their own mind and their own slavery that they create for themselves without recognizing it. Self-induced. We can call this mental slavery, the worst of all forms. I have a book called Slavery Gone for Good, which details this. Additionally, my work is not just about talking about the problems in this world, it's about talking about the solutions. I'm here in Florida, right, Central Florida, and I've networked with a lot of folks, and actually now I have land locally in the area. Some exciting news I have not yet announced to my channel, so this is technically my first public announcement. Thank you, Floyd. And that land local to us can be used to create abundance, but also to bring people together to do bigger events than ever before. I already do events local in the area, but I wrote this book called Natural Intelligence with some world leaders in different industries. You might even know some of the names, right? And these world leaders are inspiring me every day because they're showing, by example, what we need to do to create true freedom on earth. That is permaculture and voluntarism. Two ideas if you've never heard of, right? You come from any background.
Who are your co-authors? Read those.
All right, Marjorie Wildcraft. Okay, so she's a preparedness leader, right? You might know her from her work. She's very prevalent in truth, freedom, independent media communities. You'll see her a lot of interviews. Author, best-selling author, actually. So she's one of the contributors to the book. Rowdy Mayer, he has a channel called Life Done Free. Right, this is a guy who had corporate life, like literally was like high-end in the corporate life, and then realized, man, I gotta change things, because when COVID came around, he challenged things, questioned things, and short story short. Basically, he, got out of that and he created his own town. Now he's like a very successful land developer. He's helping people escape the system altogether, become prepared, and create that, you can say, parallel economy. So incredible solutions and very inspiring. Go to his channel if you're interested. Pat Miletich, a UFC world champion. Right? This is somebody who was in that system. Everybody around him was sick, and he was training athletes. So he had to learn, how do I make the best athletes in this field? So what he did was basically, helping people find out like the best supplements, finding out the best diet, and then it led him to soil health. So now he's known as like a soil savior. He met Jim Gale, and now he's focused on how do we fix the soil, because that's really the foundation to all our food supply, right? So he has a lot of solutions for that. He works with Dr. Will Spencer. We have Joel Salatin. Okay, Joel Salatin is a regenerative farmer, one of the actually like the leading regenerative farmers in all of America, if not the world. He's also a best-selling author and has a lot of different articles and stuff online as well. He goes by the title, The Lunatic Farmer, online. Right. We have Kevin Fretz, who's a leader in organics. This guy is great. I mean, he was one of the first people who reached out to me from Jim Gale's Earth Council, and you'll probably see him a lot more as time moves on. But he's a leader in the organics industry. And he's been in that industry for over 30 years. He's finding out all the healthy so-called organic products, they're just as bad as all the bad products, and he's exposing it. He's throwing it off the roof. He's like, this is all fraud. And so, but he shares the solutions to that, and actually it would save people money and make them healthy. So we're actually I'm working with him to actually create proposals for the states and for all the people, and going around all of Florida to share these solutions that are just untold. So Kevin and I are going to have a big involvement potentially together. He also has machinery and ideas of what to do if you do have land to make a lot of money, which is very important for the freedom and truth community if they want to spread the message on a more mass scale and do bigger things. But of course, you can start networking now without necessarily needing all the money. That money kind of fell into my hands just doing the events to bring people together, right? Sort of a spontaneity. Right. Same thing with the land and the other things. McKinley Halati is the final person who's a contributor to this, aside from Jim Gale, who's a co-author. McKinley Halati, he has solutions for 3D printed buildings using, steel and all sorts of amazing materials. So that's the future, right? I mean, these solutions are the future, and people don't know about a lot of them, but they're going to be inevitable because they outbeat everything else in their field. They're not just better cost-wise and then producing money too, turning like useless assets into valuable assets. They help us tremendously in so many ways. So, when you can have both the financial end on your side and the health on your side, and helping the environment and helping with our freedom, it's a win-win for everybody. So it's simply a matter of sharing that with folks. And so that's why this book, it was very small, written so that way if you can go down different avenues and you can become inspired to start doing something right now.
So let me ask you this. So you said that the consortium of your little group with, that authored the book, you're trying to get into different states to get the states to adopt this type of produce, right? For the soil, regenerative.
Yeah, because we have bad management basically all across the country. I mean, I think everybody knows that for numerous amounts of things. The problem is, however, although we're going to do proposals to these states and to these governments, we're going to do it as people, as fellow people, just simply caring about the message. The most amount of impact, the most amount of change is going to happen through private individuals and private lands. Kevin Fretz has worked with the governments for all his life. He knows how it's like. He knows what to say in meetings. He knows what to write up. And he's like, it's a waste of time. It's not really going to help change things. If you really want to change things, you work with private individuals. Now, this is key, right? Because, of course, if you know about my work, guys, I'm not political. I'm outside the political game. Yeah. I'm beyond that altogether. And for a lot of folks, I don't think they understand that. I challenge the Republicans today. I challenge the people who are pro-Trump or pro-Kennedy because their solutions are not root targeting. That's just the truth from a health point of view, from a health practitioner point of view. And now I have a presentation called Health Revealed, which is its own website, healthrevealed.org. You can go to that, right? And we are open to collaborators from any practitioner, any field worldwide. And we are gathering all this resources and material into this belief system called statism. which has never been detailed before in psychology or in the medical field as a whole. And we're addressing this from such a huge holistic point of view because we've been gathering resources and data for the past 2 years. So for Edward Group out there, if you're listening to this or you send this message to him, I publicly challenge you. I followed your work for, 10 years, basically, because since I was like 13 or 14 doing research into health and nutrition, right? And I'm a health coach and I really respect your work. But if we're really going to heal our world, it's going to take a radical shift in perspective. It's not going to take the government. The government is not our solution here. If you want the government to regulate the foods that are in, our environment and from these companies, you're not wanting a free market. You're not wanting true freedom. In the same way, and just to make everybody mad, I'll throw this one out. Right? Let's start with a bang. Let's make everybody mad. For the people who want very strict borders and want to deport people and get the illegals out of the country, you don't want true freedom either. Because let's say somebody naturally just steps on some imaginary border which was determined by some war long ago or some government which probably stole the land illegally anyways, like Hawaii. Are we going to go back in time and say, oh, let's put Hawaii back into a sovereign state, let's put Texas back into a sovereign state, let's reinstall the Native Americans? No, it's silly, right? But at the same time, we're holding on to these systems of the past, and we just think that these are the truth, and so that way we need to uphold these borders, but not the borders of the past, even though there were billions of governments before this. Just look at the history of the world, my friends. This is all just a cycle of a repeat. We're not actually attaining true freedom, but we can, if we choose to. I'm here for the evolution of humanity. I'm not here for the repeat of history. So Edward Group, if you're here for that too, and you want true freedom and true health for the populace, you will consider these words. You will consider to understand statism in the truly free market and how it operates. If you stand for freedom and allowing people to live their own life. We say that, if you want to change the food, well, why not change the environment? Well, then why not change this? Why not change that? You're going to end up changing everything. Now everything becomes super regulated. It's like, oh, I want my needs fulfilled. I want my wants fulfilled. Oh, well, what about speech? Some speech can be dangerous, right? So people use that as an excuse to ban freedom of speech. Oh, some guns are dangerous. Let's use that as an excuse to regulate firearms. And now people can't defend themselves. And now we have tyranny again. The excuse we make for our own slavery is our biggest downside, our biggest downfall. And the best, most tolerant, most peaceful, trustworthy people are the ones who create the most suffering on this earth. The most bloody wars have been done under a banner of moral propriety. People saying, I have the indignation, the virtue, and these people do not. So let's go on a crusade, let's go on a jihad, like all those religious wars in history, and purify those people who are impure. Let's kick them out of the country, let's put them over here. And let's take their land, and then maybe we'll make half of them slaves, and then they have to obey us. And then over the course of generations, they'll become citizens. They won't even know that they were once slaves. This is some powerful, and if this shocks you, if this makes you mad, I'm just telling you as it is. Who else is going to tell you, right? Think about this. This is a quote from Henry Clark Wright, right? This is an abolitionist, right? Somebody who wanted to end slavery. He says, it is absurd and irrational to authorize a government to kill men to prevent men from being enslaved, or to empower them to make war to abolish slavery. The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke, he says, culture teaches that the only security to be found in life is in government. Only they can secure your water, your air, and your food. Yield authority to them. The strength of environmentalism is that it can be used to regulate every aspect of your life. Transportation, food, housing, energy, and communication, they all fall under this umbrella of regulation and control. Environmentalism is just one more excuse to implement slavery. Auburn Herbert says to, and this is another abolitionist and one of the founders of voluntarism, right, which is to create a voluntary world. He says to have our wants supplied from without by a a huge state machinery to be regulated and inspected by great armies of officials who are themselves slaves of the system which they administer, will in the long run teach us nothing, will profit us nothing. The true education of children, the true provision for old age, the true conquering of our vices, the true satisfying of our wants can only be won as we learn to form a society of free men, in which individually and in our own self-chosen groups we seek the truest way of solving these great problems. Before any real progress can be made, the great truth must seek deep into our hearts that we cannot in any of these matters be saved by machinery. We can only be saved by moral energy in ourselves and those around us. And finally, I'll have a quote here from Stephen Pearl Andrews, and we can open the conversation. He was another abolitionist who said, "Government of all sorts is adverse to freedom. It destroys the freedom of the subject directly by virtue of the fact that he is a subject, and destroys equally the freedom of the governor indirectly by devolving on him the necessity of overlooking and attempting hopelessly to regulate the conduct of others, a task never yet accomplished, and the attempt at which is sufficiently harassing to wear the life out of the most zealous advocate of order." And this is why all the politicians become corrupt, and even the best ones end up failing or end up having to fight the system all their life and never getting anywhere. So, there's my whole introduction. I prepared those notes for the show and wanted to go off with a bit of a bang. And if anybody is adverse to some of the words I have to say, let's do it. Let's open the conversation.
Well, if that didn't impress them, I don't know what will. And you are not yet 25 years old, are you?
No, sir. I've talked to a lot of folks in the freedom and truth community, and I by no means am an expert. I just want people to live their lives free and naturally, right? I'm pretty sure the whole goal of health in freedom is to live more in harmony with nature, or to live in harmony with God or truth. So if that's the case, then we would look beyond a lot of these man-made concepts and systems that we have created. Because if we really want the truth and live in harmony with God, we live with his system directly. We live by his orders and decrees directly. No compromise.
Let's think of this analogy, and this I just had this epiphany that it could be correct, that as we mature in life from a child into senior citizen age, that while we live that life, that we are constantly drawing this big maze of concentric rings of borders around ourselves, which eventually become this big mass maze that we're stuck in the middle of, that we've trapped ourselves in, that we just can never figure out how to get out of. Is that kind of an analogy of what we've allowed ourselves to happen through our local city, county, parish, state, federal, international laws as well?
Yes, and you can actually sum it up too as collectivism. If you simply understand that concept, it would help you understand that the state by its nature is a collectivized idea, of saying that we have to control all these people, and that our ideas are the best and need to be imposed on everybody else. If you truly are for the individual and truly want freedom, then you would do away with this idea that Carl Jung called state doctrine, that creates state slaves. I mean, just if you want, I could read his writings on how the state by its nature operates and turns into an autocracy, an oligarchy in every form. In limited form, it's more deceiving because it's limited violence, it's limited slavery. It's going to grow and grow and grow until it becomes obvious again in an even worse form than it was before because of the deception. And that's what has happened to America, essentially. And the abolitionists called it a failed experiment. They burned the Constitution publicly on the streets and called it a covenant of death and agreement with hell. But yet not a single historian has talked about this. Why? We hear about slavery in school. We only hear about African American slaves. We never hear about the foundations of slavery going back thousands of years and how it existed in every part of the world. Why? Because the systems we have now are basically born and bred from these religious priest-king-based slave-like systems. And they still operate the same way through this idea of divine right and right to rule, which, where did they get that right from? Where did they get that right to rule from? Where does it come from?
We surrendered it to them. We gave it to them.
It doesn't exist, but we believe, like, the minute you put on that outfit, that title, everything they say, their word is law. Well, gosh, I mean, they're more powerful than God. They can control the businesses, the individuals, the land. What's going on here? Maybe they're trying to replace God. Oh, well, what is AI trying to do? And who has all the AI? Most of it, right? What is AI going to do? It's going to increase that effort. And soon you won't know what is real and what is not real. But see, we can shift this whole thing because the individual having sovereignty and self-ownership over themselves overdoes everything else. No matter what they can do to us in our health, whether it's a corporation or a government or an individual, it doesn't matter because you have sovereignty over yourself. See, if you regulate the health system, like Dr. Group gets in or anybody gets in, they change different laws, the companies are just going to find a workaround. Barack Obama banned trans fats in 2008. Right? But of course, the companies just did partially hydrogenated oils instead of hydrogenated oils in our food supply. So now trans fat is in the decimals, and when you add up the serving sizes, it turns into whole numbers. Nobody can understand that. It sounds too complicated. It's extremely deceptive, but that's what the industry is willing to do to keep their product on the market and keep it addictive and keep people sick. They're going to always find a workaround. Like Plato said, good people don't need laws to act responsibly, and bad people will find ways around the laws. What are we doing here?
I think what they're trying to do is go in and get rid of most of the laws. That's the problem.
Right.
They've gone in and bastardized them, and and I'll bring this up because I was going to ask you
most of the laws. Yeah, but isn't that arbitrary? It's arbitrary upon what laws to get rid of, and then you're going to be fighting a system that is wholly outdated to begin with, which has so many loopholes and so many systems to get through, and you're not affecting people directly, right? So, I mean, it's a waste of money. It'll be a waste of resources, a waste of time, and it'll end up everybody will get more mad and divided, and there's going to be a bunch of, like I said, other problems that come into play. As you strip away one law, another law is still there. It's going to cause a bunch of issues as long as you still don't have a free market regulating the actions of individuals, because you're not acting on the level of individuals. You're acting still as if somebody has the authority above individuals. So like you have some subsidiaries, some regulations above the people, and instead of a bunch of regulations, it's still regulations.
We as consumers don't have any authority over, I'll just use Nabisco or Kellogg's as an example of what ingredients they can put in there. We can choose not to buy their product they put out to sell as a boycott measure to tell them that, hey, we don't want red and yellow dyes in our Fruit Loops. So you need to cease that, and we don't want the sugar.
Foodbabe had petitions for like millions of signatures and changed a lot of the food industry. I've seen a shift over the past 10 years, and a lot of brands and companies have gotten amazingly better with the ingredients, okay? But it doesn't really change the health of the people, and especially the mindset. Like, you have to understand, most of the health anyways is off the plate, off of diet. It's mostly psychological. It's mostly with their families. It's mostly with their environment, their exercise, their relationships as a whole, and their spirituality, right? I mean, we need a whole cultural shift if we're going to actually heal this world. And I hope Dr. Edward Group and these other practitioners understand this. It's not just going to take a food-based revolution. Now, as much as I appreciate that, again, I love nutrition. That's like one of my main expertise. Is what started my whole channel. It's just that if you want to get to the root cause, as a practitioner in natural medicine would, you have to be able to look at all the different options and, treatment options, right? If you're ignorant of these different treatment options and these alternatives, and they're being censored or they're being attacked, you might lose out on something that can actually heal people quite a lot. So I just ask for them to deeply consider it, just because we have a whole project dedicated to it now, healthrevealed.org, and we have 2 presentations released now, and we're going to have a 24-hour presentation, and then we're going to be clipping it, and then we're going to be doing mass outreach, and it's going to be massive, right? So I'm going to want to speak to people like Dr. Edward Group. I love his work and his products and his knowledge. His wisdom is fantastic. Doesn't mean they know about slavery. Doesn't mean they know about the history of governments. I mean, just to put that frankly. Love David Wolf, by the way. One of my favorites. Yep. And bear in mind, I've talked with Mike Adams, who's like a best friend of both of them too. Right? I've been on the show several times. And Mike, you know what Mike is going through right now? He's going through a whole worldview shift himself. he's realizing we can't use the government as a solution. And he did not vote for Trump, and everybody was surprised because, usually Alex Jones, Mike, and all these guys are supposed to be the pro-Trumpers and Republican, and yeah, we got to go fight the Democrats. And so people were surprised when he didn't do that. He's like, well, I'm a journalist. I need to look at things objectively. I need to criticize whoever's in power. And we need to create the new media in the new system, which is beyond these political parties. He gets it. He's starting to get it. And you know why? It's because he interviewed Derek Brose. He interviewed John Bush. He interviewed Mark Passio. He interviewed myself. And these are the only 4 people he's talked to so far out of the thousands that are mostly Republican and mostly political, that are people who are saying there's an anti-political, non-political solution, both anti-political. It's like non-political and anti. It has to be if you actually want true freedom. And
I'm in that boat as well, because,
Thank you.
told everybody, Trump's not going to ride in here on a white stallion and save the damn day. In fact, Mark Z this morning almost quoted me word for word everything that I've been saying about that we are the white hats. There are no white hats. It's not going to be the government. However, the reason Trump got so much support was because of the illegal immigration, because of the crime, because of the inflation, because of the outrageous federal spending.
People are desperate.
Yeah, World War III, the choices, it was either Trump or Harris, and we knew what that looked like. I've talked about Mark Andreessen. I don't know if you follow him, with his visit with the Biden administration in March, and the clip that I saw was actually out of context, because they posted it and made it seem like every business that was going to be a startup, but it was just AI that he was talking about. So let me clarify that context for you right here and now. But AI was going to be in control of the United States government, and only 3 companies were going to be in charge of all the AI. And if you were going to do any AI startups, that was dead in the water.
Yep.
That's what changed him, put him over in Trump's camp. And now I just saw an interview with him, I think yesterday or the day before, and he said he spent half his time since the election at Mar-a-Lago talking to Trump. Now, again, I'm not a political animal. I never, ever thought I would say, hey, please go vote for this guy. But at this particular time in our, state of the world, that was the best solution at the time for what we were going through. Now, is it going to be the cure-all for everything? I doubt it very seriously. They're going to fight this tooth and nail we already know what this looks like. So there's a organization called ALEC. Have you ever heard of them? American Legislative Exchange Council?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, let me show you their website real quick. I found out about these guys when I was in prison, because I was doing an appeal or writ of habeas corpus for stand your ground law. Somebody had stabbed somebody on their own property, defending somebody else. Alec was the one who drafted the law for the castle doctrine, or stand your ground. You're familiar with that in Florida. It's a big deal there as well. What they do is they draft legislation and they present it to legislators or Congress people to submit as bills to be debated whether or not that should become a law in their jurisdiction. That's how they got the Castle Doctrine law passed across the country. And they do this with various things. Most of ALEC are former attorneys, judges, politicians, et cetera, et cetera. You would think the same ilk that they're targeting. But that is a maybe potential avenue that you could take. Now, me, myself, I've already said outright that, Trump was, partaking in illegal activities when he was a real estate developer in New York, because in New York, as well as New Jersey, anything on that upper East Coast, if you're dealing with any industry, construction, Teamsters, transportation, shipping, storage, you're dealing with nefarious people who want money under the table. And you have to do that.
Yep.
So that's, and
Mm-hmm.
Rudy Giuliani, I watched an interview with him. I don't know if you follow Tucker Carlson.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do.
But, okay, so he's doing the All the King's Men videos. Rudy Giuliani was one of them, and I watched that, and it really opened my eyes to who Rudy Giuliani really is. That guy, he is like a world-renowned historian as far as his history. Uh, but during his tenure at the Department of Justice for the Assistant Attorney General in New York, in Manhattan, when he was litigating against all the RICOs and the mafia and all that, he clearly said that, people like Trump, he didn't say Trump specifically, but if you were doing real estate development, you were definitely, doing grafts and bribes to get shit done. It's just part of doing business. So, I'm not saying Trump's lily white, because we all know, and I'm sure Cory will agree with this, that once you hit that billionaire club, you get a visit. They come visit you because you now have too much power, too much authority, and they need to make sure that they know, where you're going to utilize that, and they're going to try to put you in check. So
Yep.
Trump's already been there. He's already, had all the women thrown at him, and, been, I'm sure he's been in many orgies himself. He's not going to admit it. And yeah, I mean, it just comes with the freaking territory. If you're a celebrity, you have power, you have, money, you're going to attract that type of lifestyle. And when you're young, ambitious, and you're good looking, it's just part of the game. I've been there. Trust me.
You were good looking, young, and yet all the ladies all over you? Probably.
And I always had a pocket full of money, and it just, and I put myself in those positions where
Casual bragging.
Yeah, it is what it is. I used to be a male dancer too, so I've literally had, women just, throw themselves at me. So, I don't even know their name, and they want to go have sex, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's real. It's an odd lifestyle once you get to that plateau and you start realizing that, hey man, a lot of this stuff is for free. You don't even have to ask. They just like throwing it at you. So then you have to get up like, oh, I don't know. I don't want that. So you have to create these self-imposed boundaries that sometimes, people like Hunter Biden, who cares? My dad's president. He'll pardon me later.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, influencers and celebrities, they have to go through a lot of hardships of their own in different ways people don't necessarily recognize, and corporations and people who make, a lot of innovative products and ideas. And so I give them credit on that end for sure. I like to differentiate these ideas. Like, I don't want people to mix up necessarily the psychology of an everyday influencer who gets millions of subscribers versus the psychology of a governor and a politician who's in office to do some very specific things. So, these two have different effects. Both of them have a negative effects of their own, and some of them are shared. So sometimes there's a bit of a mixing, you could say like a blurring of the water, muddying of the water, that happens sometimes in relationship to organizations and businesses and the government, because people often treat and look at the government as though it is like a normal business or organization. And so that can make it very dangerous, because it is certainly not. As you have just said, basically, it stifles creativity and innovation through the regulations and through telling people what to do. So if anything, it's doing the opposite of what these businesses and organizations are doing, which is creating a product and sharing it with people. And the problem then, when you have this government in power, which uses violence for all its laws and decrees, is these businesses and organizations have no choice but to go along with it and then lobby it and influence it to get their own demands. And then when they do that, they stifle competition from other, smaller businesses from trying to rise. So that's why Google and Amazon, all these big companies, don't have to pay taxes, and they're ending up in all these different lawsuits and all these problems that people are finding out. It's because they're constantly working with these government systems. They, in some degree, have to, because that's the way the system is made. right? And so if people are living by this obligation of, man, well, we have to work with the government. Oh, well, we have to fight the government. Oh, we have to fight these corporations. This need mentality and scarcity and desperation is going to lead to more problems unless we have a conscious moral shift. And that's the only way we get out of this mess, because reactory, ness, and most people are living in a fight or flight mode of response, of stressing. Right. It's not going to help us make a right decision. But a lot of people are there, and the media feeds into that, and the independent media does too. Oh my gosh, the world is ending, and you got to get prepared, and you got to buy my survival food, and blah, blah, blah. But yet they're never giving their audience action steps. Tucker Carlson or Joe Rogan or any of these guys can literally change the world overnight or within a week if they simply gave their audience action steps and mobilized them and did some acts of civil disobedience. Everything would be over. But instead, they choose to play the political game as the only game they know, and the game that's safe for them to partake in, and something that benefits their business because they have sponsorships. And people don't look at it like that. But if you do, it's like, wow, this is why I'm invited to Mike Adams' platform, because he says he has no sponsorships and he has nobody that's influencing him. But I'm not going to be invited to these other guys who all of their sponsors, mostly, by the way, are pharma companies, right? We know that. On all these medical groups, because that's where all the money is going. Follow the money, right? And where is the money going? Where is it coming from? Look at the Federal Reserve. Look at the World Economic Forum. And then look at Israel. And you're going to tell me that Republicans can make a difference when you have all these other systems in place, and the nature of the system as a whole is psychologically, historically, economically not viable through all those metrics? You can even look at anthropology, and I can support it, or even linguistics. I'm going to detail this on my channel because all of academia is just in complete ignorance of these different perspectives. It's almost absurd to me.
It is absurd, bro. It's astonishing. Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to wrap your head around it.
Yeah,
it's incredible. Now, let me ask you this, okay? And we were segueing into where I want to go.
Sure, I'm sorry if I took off track.
I want to ask you this question because I really, 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 truly respect you as a human being. Okay,
yeah, as with you. Thank you for.
And that says a lot, because I don't throw that out to just anybody and everybody. If Cory Endrulat was president-elect January 20th, 2025, how are you going to change everything? What would your platform be if you were allowed that authority that Trump's going to have on the 20th? What would you do? Explain that. Break that down for everybody so they have a complete understanding of what that looks like for you. What would you, this is an example. Get rid of the FDA, get rid of the USDA. What would you put in place of that, if anything at all? Break that down for us, and I'm going to give you the stage.
Here it is. Ready? Simply living my life as I do right now. and in addition, that's one. Okay, it's a twofold option of solutions, right? I live my life as I do right now, simply not changing a single stinking thing, right? Living my life with family, and now I'm not going to be corrupted at all, and now the systems are not going to be fed and any problems. Now all I have to say from here is all order followers, all people in government administration, step down, say no, right? That's it. I don't have to write down anything on a piece of paper. I don't have to pass some new law to get rid of old laws or fix old law problems or create a new government and charter up something new. Nope. That's just going to cause more of the problem, and people are going to look up more to me before the solution. They're going to say, Cory, you help the world and you must be obeyed and everybody should follow you. It's just going to cause more irresponsibility, lack of self-ownership. So I live my life and I simply say, hey, everybody just say, just do your thing. So literally, I wouldn't even step into the office. I wouldn't even go to any parades, wouldn't go to any celebrations. I would just be doing my own thing. Nobody would even know I'm president. And that's exactly the same story that comes out of the Dao Di Ching and the Chuangzi from ancient China. They asked him, Chuangzi was fishing at a stream, and a bunch of emperors came up to him and they said, we would like to make you emperor. Right? Because they valued him. He was a sage. He had so much wisdom. They're like, wow, you should rule over the people. And his response was that You wouldn't, take a turtle out of its natural environment and clothe it with a bunch of garments and expect that, that one turtle can help all the other turtles. You would keep that turtle in its natural environment because you're going to lose what made him great if you turn him into something that he's not. You're going to create an inauthenticity in him. You're going to take him away from nature, where he belongs. And then no wonder why you're going to end up with chaos. So he basically did what exactly I detailed. I'm just living my life and saying no, which is the same exact action, showing by example, that all the other order followers in the system need to do in order to get out of it. That's it. A peaceful revolution. No violence necessary. No, war necessary. Nothing crazy. Literally just a bunch of people stepping down saying, I'm not going to do it. Right. And if you have so many people doing it, it takes like not even necessarily a whole bunch of people. Everybody else is kind of just like, all right, so be it. And by the way, I can show you there's been times in history, like in America with Massachusetts, that actually had no government. And Thomas Paine detailed it, Edmund Burke detailed it, several founding fathers, and they said it's kind of strange because we thought that government is necessary for order, but yet here you have this state that doesn't really have anything going on, and yet there was complete order and harmony. It's kind of strange. It kind of like throws everything that we know on its head. Like, this is literally what they said. And nobody has really dug up this information. And mind you that the Constitution was written by a bunch of people who were not part of the Declaration of Independence. And some of them straight up opposed it, like Patrick Henry, warning that it would cause the government to become more corrupt and grow bigger. So again, these are historical point of views that aren't considered, but you can delve then, that's from history, then delve into the psychology of it. I just mentioned about what it does to the individual, their authenticity, what it does through collectivism and taking them out of their natural state, right? Go through anthropology, the study of civilizations, and you would see all these different cultures and how they have lived barbaric and believing that some people have the right to rule over them and believing that might makes right. And these ideas that we would consider now old and barbaric and we wouldn't do them anymore. Slavery was basically a custom and for thousands of years part of life and society. Nobody questioned it. Plato, Aristotle, the greatest thinkers, never questioned it, assumed even in their utopian visions a world where slavery was still existent. I mean, that's how deeply ingrained it was. It literally was not challenged at all. So, we really have been going through some major moral breakthroughs as a civilization. Who's to say we cannot make this final step? If we see it and we can grasp it and we see it so simple, it's literally just living our life in peace. What's stopping us, right? Our own fears, our own insecurity, and our own lack of courage. And all it takes is one influencer or a couple, and they can just call their friends and say, hey, let's grow food, not lawns. We create abundance everywhere. There's no scarcity. That defeats the roots to war, right? And then we overcome that fear by coming together and saying no. You have this voluntary solution of simply saying no and the permaculture solution of grow food, not lawns. These are not actions that take a government or writing on a piece of paper or passing a law to create. It just takes the minds of people and people willing to do it. It's like I just got land over here. I'm going to create a community center and I'm going to bring people together as I've been doing, and we're going to inspire people. And eventually the goal is to get to that point where we can simply say no. How many people say this is the goal we have? Many people are like, well, we want to make this much money. We want to help the community. We want to feed everybody. I'm saying let's free the world. Let's evolve the human destiny. Right. Who's looking at that? We got to think like this if we really want to move forward, because AI is encroaching upon us and will literally deceive us. And it's going to be our greatest downside because, again, the governments will use this to control us in ways that we've never seen before, enslaving us in ways we've never seen before, because we'll have microchips in us and we have bio-nano things. Look that up. See how dangerous that is, and how they could use it for policemen and telling them to use certain orders or use certain body parts for stronger strength, and telling patients when to take their medication because their body is being monitored. Do you want that? Oh, but it's good. It's good because people are not going to be self-responsible. People are not going to take charge of their health, so they need machines. Oh, well, people are incapable of being free, so they need governments. They're immoral people. You are basically, by making that statement, dehumanizing your fellow man and saying that they should not be something that they absolutely can be. And I don't want to put up with that.
I don't blame you. And I found out yesterday when I was interviewing Noel Benoist that they have had microchips since the late 60s as implants.
Yep, it's already in people. It's already done. So what is the step moving forward? It's like you need God. You need some sort of spiritual or higher power than these governments at this point in order to overcome it. I'm serious about that, because you're going to need something stronger than mere intellect, than mere morality, right? To overcome this evil. And as things get more desperate, as things go into a collapse, that's what people are going to be turning to. But then you know what's going to happen? The government's going to say, well, we can solve this problem, or people are going to look toward the government and say, well, hey, the government could solve this problem, and then now God's out of the picture again. Right? And all these churches are 501c3s, never challenging the government, never going to jail for their beliefs, but hey, we practice God, we want God's kingdom on earth. Yeah, give me a break. They're still paying the taxes like everybody else. They're still on the same farm, and their land can be taken any moment if the government simply writes on a piece of paper, yeah, we should take this land, because there's a bunch of order followers willing to do those orders and decrees, and the churches are not ready to face that. Right? That's why the Osho had to be taken out in the 1950s and 60s, because he was raising the same sentiment that I'm talking about. Osho, a spiritual guru that came overseas to America to share basically the idea that people can live without all these man-made systems. I mean, he was really ahead of his time, and this was before technology, like in the internet, for the most part. So I don't think his message really got out there at the time, and of course he was attacked, and he had like bodyguards. He had to worry about his safety because he was getting targeted by the government, and a lot of things were staged in his name. And there's documentaries on Netflix like spewing propaganda, and there's people in the comment section all over the internet where they're like, wow, Osho is getting attacked. And if you notice, Osho's videos are getting millions of views right now. Like they're popping up stronger than they ever were in history, because people realize his words were so true. This guy called himself an anarchist, yet he's a spiritual guru. It's like, this is why he was attacked by the government. And he said, I'm not like these other anarchists who are philosophical, who wave banners, who try to put on an identity for themselves. He just wants people to live their lives. He just wants people to be free. And so he spoke up against every system, religion, government, all of it, because he saw it was all so interwoven and tangled up. So he created his own like town in the middle of like the Midwest of America. Now, that's not what I'm trying to create, by the way, but it is something worth looking at, because it's like, wow, there's some people who are willing to go to that really, extreme, courageous end. And it shows itself through history. Now I'm looking back on it and I'm like, whoa, look at what he tried doing. And there's other people who have done it, I'd say, before the time was right. Like the abolitionists were creating towns for the Underground Railroad, right? Some of them had no government, and they were helping runaway slaves. And they were like, wow, this is amazing. And a lot of people would actually go there to live, like even the abolitionists, because they're like, this is freedom. So it's people coming to understand it through the ages. It's so recent. Like that's not even 200, not even 100 years ago. Very recent. But we need it now very desperately. World War II was not too long ago either, right? So people are coming to understand this. The 60s was like a cultural shift, revolution, but then it started getting mixed with drugs and identity, right? So people saw where that went wrong. So now, we can move ahead again, and you'll notice a lot of people say, we need the 60s back, and oh man, it was so much fun and peace and love. Like people see the good that came out of it, and people see the bad. So we can move forward and totally shift it all. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. The 60s got hijacked by the CIA and MK Ultra.
Yep. G. Edward Griffin talks about that because he was alive in the 60s. If you know who he is.
So was I. And I didn't do any LSD in the 60s, but I definitely did in the 70s. Yeah. But the 60s ended on a bad note. Definitely, I mentioned it before with Hell's Angels and Rolling Stones at Altamont in July of 1969. So now you did a perfect segue because you've been talking about social media influencers and some of those that are on the political pathway and agenda, and some that are using the religious aspect, the 501, 508,
Mm-hmm.
and doing it for their own ego, profit, whatever their own machinations are. So somebody that I noticed you recently called out was Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
Um, I don't follow these other social media influencers. I kind of avoided the whole QAnon thing once it, kind of came out back in 2020. I was checking it out. I was like, this ain't for me. They keep repeating the same things. They're looking for dots to connect, and who the hell has that much time to go connect dots? And one of the things like Phil Godlewski, God bless all those people who follow that guy. They really need God's blessing because they're being so duped. They take everything this guy says and they break it down into gematria and make it fit into some narrative that Phil's giving them some kind of code word bullshit. And I'm like, these people have lost their goddamn minds. That's the only thing I can, rationalize. Charlie Kirk. Let me pop up his Wikipedia because I knew you wanted to address this, and you are on the right show to address other people because that's what we do here. We look for the truth.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are, what
Right.
you're about.
And
If you're
I'm
not
the
doing
same way.
right thing, you're doing the wrong thing.
For the record, I'm the same way. I'm not looking at the individuals and attacking them just for them and the individual, who they are. I'm attacking their ideas and what they're sharing, their actions, right? I'm looking at that, just to be clear, because I have respect for everybody in this world as a human being fundamentally, beyond their identities and beyond their actions, okay? But I'm going to criticize those actions because that constitutes the expression of who you are, right? That's who you make yourself out to be in this world.
All right, let me jump over here and just, for those of you who don't know who Charlie Kirk is, and I had no idea who Charlie Kirk was. I get his emails, so apparently somebody put me on his list or whatever. Charles James Kirk, born October 14th, 1993, so he's very young still, is an American conservative political activist, author, and media personality. With Bill Montgomery, he co-founded Turning Point USA in 2012, which he was, I think, 18 or 19 when he did that, for which Kirk serves as executive director. He is the chief executive officer, CEO of Turning Point Action, Turning Point Academy, and Turning Point Faith, president of Turning Point Endowment, and a member of the Council for National Policy. Kirk was born and raised in the Chicago suburbs of Arlington Heights and Prospect Heights, Illinois. In high school, Kirk actively engaged in politics, supporting Mark Kirk's U.S. Senate campaign and campaigning against a price increase in his school's cafeteria. He briefly attended Harper College before dropping out to pursue political activism full-time, influenced by Tea Party member Bill Montgomery. In 2012, Kirk founded TPUSA, a conservative student organization that quickly grew with backing from former donors like Foster Price. As TPUSA's CEO, Kirk has expanded the organization's influence through initiatives like Professor Watch List and School Board Watch List, while raising millions in donations. In 2019, Kirk founded Turning Point Action, a political advocacy arm, and later formed Turning Point Faith, aimed at mobilizing religious communities on conservative issues. Kirk hosts the Charlie Kirk Show, a conservative talk radio program. Kirk has gained notoriety for his provocative activism, promotion of conservative and Trump-aligned causes, and his stance on issues like the COVID-19 response, critical race theory, and climate change. And I'm not going to go off into any more of that, but basically here's his picture. He is 31 years of age. Like I said, he is quite young, not that much older than Cory himself. So, what about Charlie Kirk? No, just let's give us your opinion.
Well, I made an outreach video for followers of Charlie Kirk, and if Charlie Kirk watches it, great, although I don't know if that's going to be the case, maybe in time. so that the followers or Charlie Kirk can understand more of their own belief system, because I was in that belief system myself, and simply sharing resources with them, right? And the reason why is because he has a big influence upon the college age and the younger generations. And if we want the younger generation to uphold our values and to be autonomous, however, and be free. These two don't necessarily go together. We have to encourage people to think for themselves. And a lot of the ideas that he shares can be very viable, can be something that people say, well, yeah, what he's saying is true. I can agree with a lot of things that he says, right? And a lot of other conservatives out there. Although, of course, he won't debate fellow conservatives on topics like Israel and other things. Either way, he is influencing young minds a lot, and that concerns me because people are young, so they're more vulnerable to new ideas. And if they're being fed certain ideas, they're going to be more drawn to these ideas and they're going to be more invested into it through the course of their lifetime, potentially. They're going to be the ones who are very vocal on social media because they're young. They know how to use those tools. So it's a big deal to me. Like, I have this college student organization group that I basically am starting on campus at USF and other places called Empower the Era, right? I had to think of a name for it. So Empower the Era. And I've gathered with a bunch of others who I've met outside the college system. And we're going to the college system very peacefully, very lovingly to these fellow students who are asking questions, and we're sharing resources, and we want to do events on campus. So, we're going to show the new and show by example, create that better system out of that old, like Buckminster Fuller said. And I don't expect Charlie Kirk to change, but I do put that message out there so that way his followers can be aware of what I'm trying to do and on the college campuses, and what I see will actually make an impact for freedom. I warned them in that video, and I said, if you follow Charlie Kirk, I'm sorry to tell you, but you're not actually for true freedom. And that's, that was kind of like the statement I went out with the bank on purpose, because it grabs people's attention, but also because it's true, fundamentally, at least from my opinion, right? And again, people can think for themselves. I want to create a space on college campus where it's basically inspiring and motivating and shares alternative solutions, and people can think for themselves. And if people see their own value, they try to see some sort of purpose or meaning within their lives to defeat the mental health problems that are going on, a lot of the deeper psychology that's going on. And I'm not going to say it's political or it's, about gardening or permaculture or history or whatever, but that stuff is probably going to come up naturally as people are going to ask me questions, or they'll find out about my books or my content. I want to learn from the students directly. So I want to approach this very differently from a lot of people may expect. And I see people like Osho or Alan Watts and spiritual leaders throughout history, and I say, man, very admirable. Jiddu Krishnamurti, these guys would just sit in a room with people and inspire them to say, hey, who are you? Who are you really? Beyond what you say you are. Because people are going to ask me all sorts of questions. What's your view on this? What's your view? It's like, why are you asking me? Like, what's going on here that you have to ask me this question? And why are you so concerned about the world around you and this thing and that thing when it doesn't even directly deal with you? Or it's something out of your control, or it's something that, you're so angry and passionate about. Is it because of the media or something you saw on social media made you get so fired up? Do you recognize that reaction in yourself? Is it taking a toll on your health? Right? So let's just ask ourselves these questions, create a support network, make it fun and inviting, and I think you'll see a cultural social shift happen out of that naturally, without me having to even put the effort in of sharing all the ideas I shared on this live stream. But there will be people who dig this up and they say, oh, look, Cory's on this live stream. Look at all the things he's saying. Right? But I'm just a human being like them. I'm expressing my opinion and my views. I want them to do the same thing. They don't have to agree with me. And so that's like the main premises for all that I do, right? Is take it or leave it. Choose if you want to agree with it or not. It's up to you. But same thing then goes for you. Don't expect me to agree with what you want. And if that's the case, then already by definition we live by voluntarism and not by governments, because we live voluntarily and fully consensually. If you want something done to me, then it's non-consensual. It's going to be violence done unto me, and that's not right. I wouldn't do that to you. So let's make it reciprocal. Let's follow the golden rule. Let's apply our principles without contradiction. So that's it. Ask questions, and that's what I'm going to do on college campuses. Notice it's more of what I'm going to do rather than what is wrong with Charlie Kirk. Because I'm not here to attack other people. If you notice my channel, like, he's one of the only few people I've called out on. And that's just because he's affecting young minds. And I care about those young minds because I'm like one of them. Right? So I felt like a moral obligation to do so. Now, honestly, I could do outreach videos all day. I can call out all sorts of people that I see. Candace Owens, I mean, she's having a fallout with the Republicans too, coming to realize more of what I'm talking about. You know, it's like so many people, so many Republicans are falling out of line. And then there's also, you know, Republicans who just have good intentions, who are just like falling into it because they were once a Democrat, or maybe they're a libertarian and they're like, oh, well, libertarianism has no hope and all these parties that we're creating isn't doing anything. Like, I understand all the sympathies from these people, so I can meet them for where they're at and say, yeah, I agree. You know, yeah. And the libertarians, I mean, yeah, they're fighting a system that, you know, they are creating. It's like, you know, let's create a new party to defeat these other parties. And it's insane, but I'm just going to be asking questions and take it or leave it.
Right. Which perfect segue into the Republican National Committee. And, you know, I hate politics because politics is so deceiving. On its face, you know, you can't trust what's coming out because there's always a hidden agenda that we don't know about that they're keeping from us, regardless of what it is. And I was very hopeful when Laura Trump became co-chair of the Republican National Committee, because I was hoping that she would go in there and clean it up, get rid of the rhinos, get rid of the bullshit. But she just last week stepped down as co-chair and gave it back to the Republicans, which in my mind, she should have stayed on, you know, and got us through the 2026 elections coming up, the midterms, because that's going to be important. And you definitely don't want a rhino in there, you know, running the Republican National Committee. Because what, you know, and most people don't know this, I've said it on my show repeatedly, and Carmen, God bless it, I can never remember her last name. I wanted to know who ran against Sheila Jackson Lee, the late Sheila Jackson Lee, who's over the 18th Congressional District, House of Representatives here in Texas, in my district, and found Carmen. And I was like, oh my God, how did a former Miss 1984 Miss Venezuela, 1985 Miss Universe lose against Sheila Jackson Lee? So I called her up, asked her. She said, "You're not going to believe this, Floyd." I'm like, try me. Yeah. Then Speaker of the House, Republican Kevin McCarthy, came to Harris County, pulled all funding from the Republican National Party from all MAGA candidates, and supported all the Democrats. That's what they do. It's two sides of the same coin. So when you know real information like that, the real truth, and I swear to tell truth, whole truth, nothing but truth, so help me God, then you know for a fact that it's a corrupt system and that it can never succeed. That's why I tell you folks, even though Trump's president, even though Trump has a great narrative and he wants to change the culture and, you know, the economy and inflation and, you know, so many great things that he's talking about, how tight are his hands going to be? How much real authority is he going to have to go change things? He's not even the president yet, even though other countries are already acquiescing to his narrative, but he's not even there yet. So, you know, like, we've been in this kind of limbo for the last 60 days. Who the hell's really running the United States of America? So in that political motivation, you know, I always take a stand out, you know, hey, look, I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not part of any political party, don't ever want to be part of a political party. However, if I have to go entrench myself into a political party to make change, to get these people to off this political machination mindset that the politics is going to change our country, and it's not. It may assist us getting kind of over a hump or out of a bad spot, but it's not going to be the cure-all be-all for everything. There's just, we can go on and on, the air, the water, the soil. Those are the three main things that we need to clean up automatically. Okay. And then that goes to the food and the beverages that we consume. So when you start across that platform and just go to those three basic things, air, water, and soil, that effectually changes everything. It's the foundation of what Cory's trying to do.
And how do we do that?
Up those things. Yeah, exactly.
How do we do that?
Well, we've got to get rid of all the federal regulations, the corporate monopolies. Because
I think it takes the churches, the schools, and the prisons and the institutions from a domino effect. All it takes is somebody going to the leaders of these organizations and saying, this is what we can do. It makes you more money, helps with what you're trying to do, and it helps, the health of the environment and the people. I mean, you'll see a drop in recidivism rate if you put a garden in a prison. Okay, so it's just that simple. A garden in a school, kids love nature. A garden in a nursery home, the elderly love nature. Who doesn't? So you just put it on every institution. You create a mass scale that shifts the culture, the economy drastically. And again, Kevin Fred's had most success with private individuals. So I think it'll happen with Tucker Carlson or any of these folks. I think they need more accountability from their audience, saying, hey, here's a solution in this book. We lay it out for you. We literally have a whole section on influencers. We have a whole section dedicated to churches, to prisons, to schools, each institution, wherever you're from. And then we even have documents, one-pagers on nita.one, NITA.1, where it's in the language of Tucker as a letter set up already for them. And we even have one-pagers for each institution as well. How much easier could I make it?
Yeah, I know. That's why you're on the show.
Thank you. I'm just saying, for people out there, there's a solution. Oh my gosh, right? You see this a lot in independent media. You're talking about all the problems. Where are the solutions? Here it is. Right in front of our face.
And let me give you firsthand experience of what that looks like. Okay. Unfortunately, I was in prison back in the early 80s from 1982 to 1984, again in 87 to 89. Back in the 70s, well, I would say about mid 80s, all the way back to the establishment of the Texas penal system, 1865, when the first U.S. territorial prison was turned over to the state of Texas in Huntsville. The Walls Unit, now called the Huntsville Unit. I'm an expert on Texas Department of Criminal Justice, the Texas penal system, the prison system. So back in I'll just use the 70s, okay? In the 70s, TDCJ produced everything. They grew their own crops. They raised their own livestock. They had, the chicken houses. They had a canning facility. We pasteurized milk. We got raw milk on the unit and we pasteurized it. I used to be a milk pasteurizer.
Oh, wow.
That's how I know this stuff. Yes, absolutely. I used to be a butcher. We could actually order sides of beef. We would get a full side of beef on a truck. And then we'd take it in the butcher shop. And because our food service manager, Gerald Cecil, was a free world butcher, he taught us how to take a side of beef and break that completely down to steaks, hamburger, chili, stew meat, every freaking cut. So the prison system was 100% self-sufficient. They had peach orchards.
Cool.
It's just, And people don't know that when the Emancipation Proclamation happened here in Galveston Island in, I believe, 1868, 3 years after the Civil War ended, that's how long it took the message to get to Texas. Once they announced that, slavery was ended here in Texas. So all the plantation owners that have these huge, 1,000-acre plantations now had no more slaves. They were all free. So how do we get all this labor back into the plantation? Well, they couldn't pay for it, so they had to sell out. Well, who could afford those big plantations and supply labor? Well, the state of Texas could. So the state of Texas went in and bought those plantations and started establishing penal institutions, which we fondly call the red brick penitentiaries, because they were built in the predominantly in the 1880s and then again in the 1930s. Then they had another prison building boom in the 60s and again in the 80s and 90s. And then 2000s, they took over former military bases that were abandoned or mothballed here in the state of Texas. So that's how that developed. But trust me, back then, when you went to the chow hall to eat, okay, you can only eat one time. But when you went and ate, you might get a half a chicken. You might get a ribeye steak. I'm serious. Yeah, I'm square business. Because we got rabbits. Yeah, they grew their own rabbits, and we'd get rabbits, turkeys, chickens, beef tripe. We would get, and if you don't know what beef tripe is, that's a lining of cow. That's cow stomach lining that they use to make menudo. So all the Hispanics and Latinos love menudo. Man, they couldn't wait to get to the chow hall when they knew menudo was on the menu. So nobody had a problem going and working in the fields all day and all evening, because they knew when they came in, they were going to get a badass meal. They were going to eat good. They were going to eat healthy food that they grew or that they cultivated or they harvested or they canned or whatever that looked like. So the whole system was self-sufficient, operated on its own. We used to get, of course, the USDA food, the peanut butter, the butter, unsalted peanuts, stuff like that the USDA used to provide as a supplement food. Then in the 80s, the system changed and the bean counter started taking over the executive administration of the prison system, and they started making deals. So now you can't get a side of beef in a prison butcher shop in Texas. What you will get is they've been taking those head of cattle, trading them off to the meat processing plants and receiving back ground hamburger meat that's 60% beef, 40% soybean oil. Absolutely. So there's no more cuts of beef. We used to do what are called house orders. So the warden, assistant warden, field major, building major, the captains, they could order X amount of cuts of meat per week. So we would cut what are called house orders. So if they wanted 7 steaks, or they wanted 1¼ inch butterfly pork chops, whatever they wanted, we cut it for them, wrapped it, put it in a package, and the BOQ worker, bachelor's officer's quarters, or the warden's housekeeper would come pick them up and deliver them. Okay, that doesn't happen anymore. All that's gone. So they've kind of shot themselves in the foot, because now they have to eat the same crap that we eat. They get that same bullshit. Yeah, square business. And what they've done is taken away the self-sufficiency of a system and incorporated the big corporations, let the corporations come in. And
in the process making more prisoners.
Tell me how much sense this makes, okay? Seriously. We used to get canned mandarin, okay? And they would be peeled, and, the little slices of mandarins. They were imported from Thailand. So I'm thinking, I'm looking at this can in my hand, I'm going, hold on. The state of Texas has a valley, and it's a citrus valley. And then we have Florida over there, which is the citrus state. Why are we importing mandarin from Asia? How cost effective is that? And it doesn't make any sense. That's what we've allowed to happen. These corporate structures to take over and basically come in and rape us and feed us garbage. Now, the reason that I bring this up is because I did file a lawsuit, because when the American Correctional Association comes in and certifies these Texan prison units as being ACA certified, they're not, because in the mandatory language of the certification manual for the ACA, they have to meet the basic standards of nutrition of health put out by the USDA, which is used to be the food pyramid. Now it's my plate. And as you and I both know, the pyramid's upside down. It should be the other way. And the choose my plate's all wrong. But I proved through TDCJ's own, what they call a master menu planning guide, that the menus that are provided and the food actually served do not meet the My Plate standards. You don't get enough dairy, you don't get enough protein, and you don't get enough fruit every day. You get plenty of carbohydrates, you get plenty of fats and oils and all that stuff. But 3 of those deficient. So they are basically a racketeering influence, corrupt organization, both of them, the ACA. So every time they send TDCJ, the all red unit's been certified as an ACA compliant unit. Well, they just committed wire fraud. And if they do it repeatedly and there's multiple people doing it, that's RICO statute. So that's what's going on. That's what it looks like. And when somebody like myself comes out and whistle blows, I'm 100% ignored. Nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to make change. That's why I'm telling you folks that when you do, say something, it's very hard to get the message out. It's very hard to get support. It's very hard to get change.
Yeah.
So I've, bumped up against this, and I know what Cory's going against, and he's trying to save an entire generation. That very influential, very naive, very gullible, who believe that everything that they see on their device is the gospel. and they don't want to go do their own research. They don't want to come out and sound like Cory does and be able to just waylay somebody like myself with his knowledge. I mean, I'm just so impressed with you, bro. It's unbelievable.
That's why I reached out to you, though, is because I noticed you were willing to question things other people weren't willing to question, right? So, I mean, I just knew, like, right off the bat, like, yeah, I got to connect with this guy. It was after the common law stuff, with Anna von Reitz and all that. And it was just like, I just loved the fact, because I didn't see anyone else doing it. Like, there was no one else doing it. And I was like, finally, there's somebody who's speaking up about this. Because, like, again, I'm not going to do this on my channel. It was like start calling out everybody, because it would be like, I mean, I'd probably get a bunch of views from it. Like, literally, it'd be huge. But it's like, I need somebody has to do it, though, like somebody, because I'd rather just, like, I don't know, I'm like a documentary book guy, but like once in a while I do want to call them out, and like sometimes I have like that part of me, it's like, oh, I really gotta like want to say something, or do some sort of outreach or something. But yeah, thank you for having me on and everything.
Send me a little up and up, say, hey Floyd, check this guy out, see what you think, or check this person out, see what you think. If you want, go ahead and do a show about it. That's all you got to do.
Okay.
That's what I tell my viewers to do. Hey, if somebody you want me to look at,
okay,
send me the info.
That's good to know, actually, because like maybe that's good to know. I don't know. Maybe if there's like
Cory, they gave me the name.
But do that to me too. I mean, to be fair, question me, like question everybody. You know what I mean? Like anybody out there. Like I think it's good because it holds people accountable. And if they're not willing to have that discussion with somebody who critiques their work, I think that tells me even more about their work, and who they are as an individual.
That's why I asked you, if you were president day one, what are you going to do? What's your solution? What's your remedy? What's Cory got to say?
Well, I'm not going to break my principles. So yeah, very simple. I hope you like my response, but it's so simple, and yet it's so powerful. That right there, what I gave as a response, people would so highly underestimate. I guarantee you. But it's just because it would turn everything on its head. It would be exactly the solution that all the Republicans and libertarians looking for when it comes to like overturning laws. They don't have to sign a thing. They just have to say, hey, order followers, just say no, and then just keep living their life. There's nothing else they have to do. And the order followers are going to be like, but like I'm in this position, but the president is telling me to not do it. You know what I mean? So then it would cause such an awakening in the minds of people. You can't make it easy for them. You have to have every change requires some level of resistance. What? It's true.
I was going to tell you that because it's so simple, people won't accept it. It must be more complex for their mind to wrap around it, thinking, oh, it can't be that simple. Nothing's that simple. It's got to be hard and difficult. Yeah.
We've been trained not to think, right? We've been trained to keep from using our self-ownership. So the minute we're plunged into that and we have to take responsibility, we're like, what? It's like Frederick Douglass when he realized he was a slave. He's like, I know how to read and write now. Like I have to teach all these other fellow slaves. They are completely brainwashed, and now I have to like go on a speaking tour around the nation. And it's like he just felt like an overwhelming like moral obligation, and he couldn't take it out of himself. I think that's what's going to happen to a lot of people. You see it with a lot of the people in the medical field who left after recent events, and now they're moving toward freedom. So they're moving toward freedom, and then the people in politics are moving toward health. You're just seeing this huge convergence. And soon or later, they're going to come to psychology and philosophy. Mark my words. They're going to come to consciousness and spirituality if they're not already there. And they're going to start to transcend politics because that's where things have to go.
Yeah, has to.
Like Jordan Peterson, right? All these psychologists online, I have great respect for them because they're kind of forming the new culture. If you notice, a lot of their work is focused on the culture shift because, even Lawrence Southern says politics is downstream of culture. When the culture and the people are inspired and educated, it changes everything else in the landscape. So it's something just to bear in mind.
Wow. I've been debating on putting on a live seminar in Plano, Texas.
Okay. If you do something here, I would help you, by the way.
Well, I was thinking, because I have the facility and I know the owners, and they're they would love for me to do something in their place. They have an awesome gallery in a mall.
Beautiful.
Great people. Yeah, it's really beautiful.
When is this?
That's where I'm at. I don't know.
Okay.
That's what I was looking at earlier.
Because I might go to Texas in a couple months, actually.
Well, I would fly you in for the event.
Oh, okay.
Speak.
Well, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It would be something I would present. I talked to James C. Lovett yesterday. He's amenable to it, so I'm I may be able to get Ed to go up there and do that as well.
Yeah, I love all these guys. Yeah, deep respect for people who are just passionate and they're sharing with the world. Like it's already more than most people. Like just to put out a message as a whole. To like, even if I have criticisms, like everybody's gonna have criticisms of each other at the end of the day. It's like we need to come together and share that so we can develop the best strategy moving forward. You know what I mean? Like we can't develop the best strategy unless there are some difference in opinion that says, wait, maybe we should do things a little bit differently. Like I agree with what you want to do, but maybe we should approach it this way instead. Or maybe, twofold, we do it both ways, right? Like I said to you, I'm making proposals for people in office. Like I'm not disregarding them. I'm not saying we should not participate at all with the governments, but I am saying that we have to move beyond them. So in a way, it's a twofold, right? It's like you do both, but you cannot invest yourself and your identity into the system, because that's when you start contradicting the one end. Like the twofold has to work still with your principles. Your principles can't be contradicted, though. I mean, it's kind of, maybe I put that in the wrong way, but I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Sure. Oh yeah, absolutely.
And thank you.
Who would you want to interview?
I think my next reach outs are for people like Jordan Peterson and a psychologist, truly. I want to see a whole talk in the medical field, in the psychological medical field, regarding statism and the belief system that I tackle, like predominantly within my work. And now with the psychology project, where we detail history and delve deep into the psychology of authoritarianism, totalitarianism, and all the aspects of it, nobody in history, as far as I'm concerned, has done this. We're the first project that has done this in this full scope. So if we can talk to someone like Jordan Peterson or anybody in psychology, that's I think the next place to go, unless all these other medical practitioners are willing to delve a little bit into psychology, which I think they should, if they want to change the minds and the masses.
Would you like to talk to a PhD in psychology and has a master's in anthropological pharmacology?
I think, definitely I want to connect with them. Absolutely. I'm probably going to reach out to you when I'm ready to do mass outreach for our Health Revealed project. I'm going to say, hey, Floyd, if you know anybody, practitioners, anybody in the medical field whatsoever, they need to get involved with this project, because we're going to actually make this into like a very collaborative work where we're going to ask them for their solutions and their perspectives. So I see you got
I'm going to have to introduce you to my daughter then.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And by the way, I know people have mixed opinions with Jordan Peterson. Like, he's going into religion and a bunch of other topics. I mean, psychologists tend to delve with a lot of deep subjects, that things that people are like, what? And sometimes they get misunderstood very easily. Jordan Peterson goes on these long rants, and he's used to doing like crazy big talks. So I understand if there's controversy and there's some things you may disagree with. I don't agree with necessarily everything. I don't know all their works. I don't know everything that they've done. Their work is so extensive. They've done thousands of hours. I just know that they are looking at a cultural shift, which is something I'm trying to do too. And they're interviewing a lot of people who are very much freedom-minded. Like, they're heading toward our boot camp and the people that we know. Like, every day he's interviewing people who are like challenging the system and leaving the system. So that's a good sign to see. You want that. If you start saying, oh, well, he's bad, we shouldn't listen to him, we're not encouraging the growth of their audience and the growth of their platform, which can turn into something really good in the long run, right? So like Elon Musk and all, Dr. Drew, right? Like, he used to work at CNN. Now he's like talking about all the things and exposing things. It's amazing to see. So you just give it some time. If you encourage it in people and you say, here are the resources, and you're doing outreach, you might see a shift in their audience, in their platform. And I'm always glad to see that. I think that's awesome. Sorry if I interrupted you, but I just addressed the comment that was on there.
Oh no, it's this is your show.
No, it's your show.
You're my guest.
That's why I said that comment.
Right. When you hit an audience like Jordan Peterson has accumulated, sometimes your statements are going to be taken a little bit out of context. Sometimes you're going to bend over into areas that are outside of your audience's knowledge or ability to comprehend, and it sounds weird, or it sounds like it's going against what they're actually talking about. So sometimes when you hear these people talk for the first time, especially Jordan Peterson, because he will go all over the map on you. You have to really go back and understand exactly who they are. And this is how I tell everybody to vet any social media influencer. If they're on any social media, they have any type of influence or audience, go back and look at their videos from a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, all the way to the very first video, and see what they were doing then and what they were talking about, and see if they're talking about the same thing year after year after year. They just never change. There's no evolution. There's no growth. They're stagnant, or their ego has become overachieving in their show or their platform, or greed has stepped in, and now it's all about the money, not so much about the topics or the narratives or subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be real careful about, listening to these people, following these people, and the evolution of who they are. It's like X22. I used to listen to him at the very beginning, and then it's all fear porn. Oh, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, and then it never happened, and you never got a video saying, oh, I apologize for saying that would happen this month, and it didn't happen. They never correct themselves. They just go on to the next big fear porn.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I vet a lot of social media influencers. People send me stuff. I don't have time to go watch all their stuff to get the context of where they're at. So I'll just bump through their videos real quick and find out who they really are.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And someone in the chat said, psychologists tend to reinforce people's problems, and they may prescribe drugs. Let's also differentiate psychology versus psychiatry, right? They're two different fields, and psychiatry often gets attacked more because it's associated with drug usage and labeling people. So psychology doesn't necessarily have to be that. Just putting that out there. And also, my work, I'd say, is not psychology, but more of an eco-psychology, which is actually a thing. And eco-psychology is trying to look at the whole and then look at our relationship with nature. So basically that's my channel in a nutshell. But you're right. My content also evolves. Literally, probably a couple months from now, my channel is going to look very different from the way it looks right now, because I'll have land, and I'll be doing videos on that land and doing more stuff with permaculture, because I'm willing to change and I'm willing to experiment, and we have to if we want to create change. So thank you for having me on. I know it's 3 o'clock. I probably should go because I have some appointments and people I should talk to, but I really appreciate this, and I definitely want to keep in touch with you. I love how you're willing to question everything. And you're one of the best people, I think, in the movement doing that.
Wow. Thank you. That's quite the compliment. I'm humbled by that. I just do what I do. I'm going to continue to do what I do. I don't care. I'm not in this for viewers, subscribers, likes, thumbs ups, none of that. I'm going to sit here and do what I do day after day after day, searching for the truth for different topics and trying to expound upon my audience as much information as I can so they can make their own determinations, their own self-governance. So one last question before you go, and I know you need to run. Give us your thoughts on the assemblies, the jural assemblies, Anna Von Reitz and her whole thing. You don't have to go in deep because most of my audience already knows about that. David Lester Straight, Destry Payne. If you want to go into your experience associated with them, where do you think these entities are going to go, if they're even going to go anywhere?
Yeah. So I have quite a bit of experience with a lot of folks who come to my events too, and also personally with some of those organizations and people, particularly Anna Von Reitz and American State Nationals. And I've met a lot of people who follow a lot of what they do, but do not associate with the individuals or with the organization. So I'll meet people who do it all on their own. They do their own research, they do their own paperwork, and those people impress me. Those people are amazing people, and I've met several of them now, and they blow me away because they're their own researcher, they have their own mind, and they're really taking the time and investing into it. So one of them is actually in the chat right now. Right, Belissoful. You're listening right now in the chat, in my chat, because I'm streaming this too, and he has amazing content and very detailed, and showing the documents too, which I think is a problem with some of the American State Nationals. Anna Von Reitz never shows where she's getting her information from. Sometimes it frustrates me. It's oh, here's this court case, but it's where's the link? I want to see it. As a researcher, I have to try to dig this up, and it's going through government websites is a pain in the butt. So I'm not just going to take your word on it. I need to see it. But either way, I'm beyond paperwork altogether. And Belissoful also talks about this in his episodes too. Definitely, his channel, by the way, Fearless Floyd. If you don't know about it, you should, because his editing is amazing. Some of the best editing I've seen overall. His channel is called Government Corp Watch, right? Gov Corp Watch, and just put that one word into YouTube, and it's incredible. His editing, and he has episodes on every different subject. But you'd think he's my age too, with his editing and the way he's marketing it, very trendy. Anyways, enough boosting his ego. But it's, you know, it's worth knowing because he's another small content creator who should deserve like a lot of credit, I think, for sharing this. And
What's his name again?
Gov Corp Watch on YouTube, and he goes by Belissoful and other things too. If you want to link, tell me in the chat, Belissoful. I know you're listening, but yeah, Gov Corp Watch if you can find it. But yeah, so I'm beyond paperwork altogether, though, and if people are truly sovereign, they have to stand on principle and simply say no. If you find a workaround, you say, I got to hand out this paperwork, I got to do, you know, this certain ritual, you're still playing the game, and then you're choosing your system's better than that system, but it's still a system over people that people have to obey. You're still falling into statism. And if you don't understand statism, that belief system, that root cause that gives rise to all governments in history, you're never going to get to that root cause of what's going to help us attain freedom. So we need to get out of the paperwork mindset and into the moral, spiritual, like, let's permaculture framework. Let's create the real solutions right now with people and inspire them. If you're sitting down with them and teaching them how to write their signature and how to, you know, use what legalese, is that really going to free a soul or a mind, or is it really going to inspire them and say, hey, you can be the next Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr., you can be the next person, the visionaire who changes the world? Who, I just don't think so. It keeps us in that material game. And so I want to get beyond that. That's my view on that. And much like the other systems, it's paperwork I put on the same level as voting. It's not something that's going to harm us, but it's not something that's going to help us. And so therefore, it's symptom management. I want to get to the roots. There you have it.
Well said. Thank you. You're so phenomenal. You know, I want to come to Florida, man. I want to meet your parents. I want to shake their hands, man, for raising such an astonishing young man. Definitely going to hook you up with my daughter. So I'm gonna Telegram behind the scenes. We'll exchange more information. I definitely want to have you back on the show. I don't know when your availability between now and the new year, maybe after the new year, but definitely we'll get together and put up something for the live seminar in Plano. I definitely want to get that set up, established. I got my big calendar in front of me so I can see 2025 in whole, in mass, and I'm ready to go. So any closing that you want to say, tell them how to find you, where to hang out.
healthrevealed.org, and then stay tuned on the liberator.us. The liberator.us has a newspaper, a bunch of resources, and also where you'll hear about the project that I'm doing locally. And then healthrevealed.org is the psychology project. We want outreach as much as possible to anybody in the medical community, or even patients or clients, or if you have an experience, you went through a health journey of your own, share it with us. We want to hear from everybody. We're going to do a mass outreach in time. Not quite yet. Maybe when you're watching this, we are. But it's going to be big, and probably the biggest project I've ever done. Well, same thing with these other projects, to be fair. It keeps getting bigger and bigger for me. Let's just put it that way. The books, the videos, everything is getting more in tune, I'd say, with what I intended several years back when I started out and didn't know what I was doing. Because I was like just starting to produce content and it wasn't that well edited and I didn't know anybody, you know, so it's nice to see things evolve and grow. And some of you guys who are here along the process will be able to say one day, hey, you know, I was there in the beginning, because things will start, I think, popping off in different ways, whether it's in real life or online or with certain projects. So stay tuned and help us out.
Has anybody approached you about doing, being part of a television channel, a channel where, you know, there's always, you know, every hour there's another face?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Okay, let's work on that. Let's put something together, because between you and me and the people we know, we have enough people to have content to be able
potentially,
to run the channel 24/7.
Yeah, sounds like so. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
If we can just get an editor to start editing them down to 1 hour, You know what I mean?
If you really want to be strategic, in my opinion, you get an editor. If you're going to hire any editor, an editor that goes through these live streams and clips it, and then post that as separate videos with good thumbnails, good titles. If we can just do live streams and somebody can edit for us, that would save me most of my time, and would allow us to produce content nonstop. You're talking maybe even several videos a day. That would increase our outreach substantially, because this is what the streamers do on Twitch and on YouTube and other platforms. And the streamers gain their audience mostly from YouTube and just doing videos that are clips, however, from their live stream. So that, right, I think, would be a very good strategy if you're going to have an editor, and it would be very highly effective, I think.
Let's work on that. Let's make that happen.
Okay,
make
perhaps.
That a goal for
yeah, I think perhaps. I definitely want to consider streaming more. So,
okay.
All right.
Cory Endrulat. Cory, nature is the answer. Thank you very much for being here. I look forward to having you back. Happy holidays. Be safe.
You too,
Go
man.
kiss your parents for me.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yes. Happy holidays, everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you.
There you go. Cory Endrulat, everybody. Thank you, Cory.
Thank you.
I cannot tell you how impressed I am with that young man. I want to hook him up with my daughter. That's how impressed I am with that young man. I would love to have him as a son-in-law. Somebody I could actually have a real conversation with on probably any topic in the world. Same thing with my daughter. So those two, a meeting of the minds. I would like to just be a fly on the wall to listen to that conversation. So I look forward to putting that together. So for all of you who have watched today, thank you. I hope I turned you on to somebody new who's going to turn you on to more topics, more categories, more things to research, vet on your own. Like I said, he's a exemplary person. Very impressed with him.